James Cameron's Titanic is a movie that's both one of the best movies ever made, and maybe the worst. How can it be both, you ask? Well, how can Lindsay Lohan be both revolting and fuckable? How did Neil Armstrong land on the moon, but never fuck Lindsay Lohan? Well, let's examine this film and why some people hate it, and why some people love it, right? There's gotta be some kind of explanation.
Was that the way of it?
Is it a good movie, or is it a terrible movie? Well, everything is a matter of opinion, I guess. Unless it's my opinion, and then it's right. So let's jump in, shall we? Ha 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 ha. Number 1, I'm the king of the world. After winning the Oscar for Titanic, James Cameron famously proclaimed,
I'm the king of the world!
This upset a lot of people because they saw it as a clear endorsement for a return to monarchies. But anyway, the truth is that James Cameron kind of was the king of the world at the time. In the raking in a whole bunch of money sense. I mean, the man made like $1 billion or whatever with his movie about people drowning and freezing to death. It captured the imagination of the whole world. He also made a series of previously successful films like Terminator, Terminator 2, Aliens, The Abyss, Free Willy, and True Lies. But Titanic changed everything. It was a real game changer, unlike the self-proclaimed game changer Avatar, which didn't change any game. The only thing it changed was my diapers. Because I was sitting too long watching it. It was a very long movie and my diapers became uncomfortable to wear. It wasn't because I crapped myself, why would you think that? Although later I did crap myself. But that was because I ate Applebee's. But Avatar did usher in a new age of 3D movies. And by age, I mean 6 months. Before Cameron was just a thinking man's Michael Bay. Now he's an artist, making important movies with social commentary. Like Avatar, Avatar 2, Avatar 3, and Avatar 4. All movies about how rich white Canadian people are greedy and bad. And how blue elves are so great because they live in a big tree and poop in the woods. I poop in the woods? What's the big fucking deal? But I do love the Na'vi still. In fact, I captured my own Na'vi. Let me show her to you.
Please, mister, I'm not a real Na'vi. I was on my way to a Halloween party.
What? You're not making any goddamn sense. You must be getting lightheaded from all this oxygen.
What?
I got this for you. Let me turn it on. It's gas. It's what you're used to breathing on Pandora.
No, God, no, please.
Let me help you breathe, rather. But my question is, was Titanic always the movie it was supposed to be? James Cameron did say he pitched it as Romeo and Juliet on the Titanic. Or was it more like Star Wars, a hack sci-fi flop that was saved in editing?
Only a master of evil, Darth.
Both movies certainly were enhanced by their amazing scores, to say the least. But for this review, I'm gonna examine the good, the bad, and the ugly about Titanic, which is ironically one of my favorite movies of all time. Sadly though, I will not be reviewing Titanic 2000, one of my other favorite movies of all time. Number 2, the history. And I'm not talking about the ship, although apparently most of today's retarded teenagers didn't even know the Titanic was a real event. I know this movie is a little historically inaccurate though, because I was actually on the Titanic. I'm the last fucking survivor. But I'll get more into that later. Anyways, the Titanic is a movie about a pampered rich girl who tries to kill herself, but survives, both physically and emotionally, only with the help of a man. Leonardo DiCaprio and Rose McGowan play Jack and Kate, two star-crossed lovers sailing on the ship of doom. They get drunk, fuck in someone else's car, and yell at some poor guy just trying to do his job.
Shut up!
They also cause lots of property damage and generally act like fucking assholes. Leo plays a guy named Jack Dawson, a struggling actor who also draws pictures.
Well, well, well. And these were drawn from life?
Rose plays Kate Winslet, a 17-year-old girl being forced into marriage for money, diamonds, and domestic violence. It's a classic love story, really. A girl being forced to marry some jerk with money and a bad Hollywood hairpiece. I'd say the inspiration for Kate must have been Mia Farrow. Sinatra, you fuck!
Oh, I hate this song. Yeah, you sing it for 8 years, you would hate it too.
You bought your rug at Gilman's Discount Wigs in Jersey. You cheapskate? I know it because I sold it to you!
Don't give me that jazz.
But anywho, she ends up falling in love with the poor struggling actor and decides to follow her heart or whatever. I see, first and foremost, I think this is what a lot of people connected with. The simplicity of the story. Again, it's kind of like Star Wars. Mainstream sci-fi in the 60s and 70s was pretty heavy and boring stuff for the most part. And then came along the simple adventure film about a boy who topples a giant space empire with the help of his weird LGBT friends. And bam, you got a pop cultural milestone. It was the same thing with Titanic. Every so often you gotta stop and say, hey everyone, remember a good old-fashioned simple story? You know, one the general public can connect with. That's why Lars von Trier's Antichrist was so popular. So why do so many people hate Titanic? Is it because of that witch Celine Dion and her fucking annoying song?
Is my boat ready?
Is it because it became too popular and then it became cool to not like it anymore because it was so popular? Is Titanic what gave birth to the hipster movement? Or is it because James Cameron is a huge asshole?
Otherwise, it's more work for Rob, even though I don't care.
Well, we'll discuss all these reasons. But first, number 3, why is this movie good? As I just said, Titanic had a very basic love story, lacking in any modern-day cynicism. It was very old Hollywood, as they say. It's that return to a simpler time, which will always have a universal appeal. But in addition to the heartstring-pulling story, Titanic also gave us a great movie-going experience, complete with shooting guns and people dying in horrific ways. That's what I liked about the film, because I'm a history buff and a fan of violence. All kinds of violence. No previous Titanic film was filled with such amazing things. It was a new take on a classic story. These people weren't all singing "Nearer My God" to thee as the ship went down. They were murdering each other. So you have these two main elements. A simple and ultimately tragic love story even mongoloids could relate to. And a downright suspenseful and well-made action movie by one of the all-time action movie masters. But in addition to that, there is attention to detail in another area. Number 4, Titanic history. Titanic brings a historical event to life in an exciting way. Not the Jack and Kate part, but mostly everything else. We've heard most of this shit before, but I'll go through it again. When Titanic was built, she was the largest moving object ever created by man. Other than President Taft. Taft, you fuck! You bought your clothes at the Portly Gentleman used clothing store. You cheapskate? I know it because I sold it to you! Anyways, I'm not just being sexist about Titanic. It's because men fucking built it. The only thing women did back then was complain. And also give birth to men who built amazing things. Anyway, we had gotten a little arrogant and didn't think a horrible tragedy like the saw some ship sinking would ever happen. Especially right after we just fucking built it. The Titanic was also a microcosm of society at the time. The first-class passengers on Titanic were rich white people. Second-class passengers were sort of rich white people. And the third-class passengers were white people that were still better off than most black people. Then everyone had to struggle to survive when the rich white people from the White Star Line didn't put enough lifeboats on for all the white people. Then everyone turned even whiter when they died. And you thought being black was hard. Some people on Titanic would die with nobility. like Guggenheim, Astor, and Strauss. And some people would act like fucking assholes. I'm looking at you, Bruce Ismay. You fucked my mother right before you got into the lifeboat with honor and nobility. Titanic was like a snow globe of instant drama. Just shake it up! That reminds me. I've got a Titanic snow globe of my own. Let me go see where that's at. Here's my Titanic snow globe. Isn't it big? Let me go have the Navi take a picture with it. And I'll send it to James Cameron. He'll get a kick out of it. Hey, Navi, look at my Titanic snow globe. Isn't it great? Hello? Oh, fuck! You Navi, you made me drop my Titanic snow globe, you fucking retarded elf. Fucking God! God damn it! I spent $100 on that fucking crap. Anyway, back to To Catch a Yeti. I love this movie. My point is, Titanic is pretty hard to fuck up from a storytelling perspective. Although the attempt at a sequel by the venerable Asylum Film Company failed to live up to the same success as James Cameron's film, most previous films about Titanic have been pretty good. And had a lot more swearing, too.
This boat is full, now get back! Fuck that!
Well, 3 months later, he's fucking rich.
There's this film, Titanic from 1953, There's a Night to Remember, and even 2 miniseries, one from 1996 and another one from this year. The 100th anniversary brought out a whole bunch of new Titanic crap that no one saw. How many times can this story be told? And why are people so fascinated by it? But even in 1995, with so many previous incarnations, James Cameron went ahead to make his film. And it's a good thing too, because no one had done the story on this scale before. Other Titanic movies always had their limitations. Cheap-looking miniatures, sets that kind of looked like what the ship looked like, just not at all. But Cameron set out to do something a little more epic. Using non-union Mexican slave labor, he built a near-size replica of the ship in a new studio Fox made for the movie. It was in Baja, Mexico. Great care was taken at every step during the process by the documentary crews not to show the Mexicans hand-carving the deck chairs for $1 a day. Oh shit, can we cut that out? Can you take that out? Cameron also used his years of experience in making science fiction films to create some amazing effects for a story that wasn't traditionally thought of needing state-of-the-art special effects. He even went down to the actual Titanic wreck and filmed there too. Also, Cameron's love of history inspired him to have real sets and costumes that were as accurate as possible. I could sit back and say that Titanic was gay, or that sucked, or was retarded ass.
Ever been to Wisconsin?
But you know, you've got to respect the amount of work that this guy put into his movie. He worked his ass off, unlike other filmmakers making similar films at the time and complaining about it.
You know, we're never going to beat Titanic. Nobody can.
Cameron is a real hands-on director, as stated in these propaganda films.
I've never seen anyone so utterly focused.
He's very talented in a lot of different areas, technically, as a director and as an artist as well.
He also really cares about what he's trying to accomplish. But then again, so did Jim Jones. But Cameron had much better results. 11 less people died from cyanide poisoning. Number 5. Sink this. So I think Titanic was supposed to be an action movie.
Suddenly I felt myself turning into an action hero going...
Until that Celine Dion song ruined everything. It makes sense, really. James Cameron wrote and directed action movies. He also has a passion for the sea, and has always been fascinated with the Titanic.
If you were on the ship, it was a rocket sled of a ride. It was a roller coaster.
So I think his plan was to make an action movie with a love story in it, rather than the opposite. Cameron's a smart guy, and he knows that in order to fully satisfy an audience, they need an emotional core to the movie.
It became apparent to me that in order to satisfy all my dramatic goals, it was going to have to be a love story.
Let's take a look at some precedents. You've got Sarah and Kyle, Virgil and Lindsay, Harry and Helen, Jake and Smurfette, and so on. However, when you think of the phrase love story, Movies like The Terminator or The Abyss don't usually come to mind. But with Titanic, it does. In fact, it's number 37 on AFI's top 100 love story movies of all time. So let's flash back to the original marketing campaign of Titanic when it was set to be released in the summer of '97. As previously seen on my Titanic popcorn tub, the advertisements were all the Titanic logo sinking against the riveted steel of the ship. Get out of my popcorn tub! Later, the artwork would mysteriously turn into this crap. The original tagline was, "Collide with Destiny," and then it suddenly became, "Nothing on Earth could come between them." But something did come between them. An iceberg. And this whole thing... Oh, wait. They mean on Earth. An iceberg's in the water. Oh, I get it. Then we all got inundated with this fictional Jack and Kate story crap, and we forgot about the other 1,500 people that died. Especially that baby.
Where should I go?
Your baby is fucked, lady. Then everything about this damn movie became about these two. Even fucking horrible fan art. This one don't even make no goddamn sense. People cried, kids cried, little girls cried, babies cried, and because of Titanic, Leo got to fuck all these women. Kate's heart will go on, but Leo's hard-on will go on. So none of Cameron's previous films were even mild attempts at making the greatest love story ever told, but rather action films with some human elements to hold them together. So what would make him want to be romantic all of a sudden?
The rockets were brought to the bridge by Quartermaster Rowe, who saw Boat 7 in the water, so how can Boat 7 be being...
I guess 5 marriages makes him a pretty romantic guy, right? Is that how that works? So let's do an analysis. If you're going on the assumption that you want to make an action film from Titanic primarily, well, where do you start? How can you squeeze every bit of action out of this historical event? Let me ask the Navi what she thinks about that. Hey Navi, I got a question for... Oh... I guess she wasn't a Navi. Come to think of it, she wasn't 9 feet tall either. And it looks like cheap Halloween makeup on her face. And it looks like her wig fell off too. Also, she kept saying that her name was Samantha or something. Whatever. Back to my movie. Oh boy, do I love to catch a Yeti. 1. Iceberg hit sequence. This is a given, of course, but it's probably the best sequence in the whole film. It's intense, exciting, and perfectly edited and executed. You almost feel like the ship just might make it past the iceberg. Then you feel like an idiot for thinking that. Even our main characters are there to almost get hit by ice, involving them in the action. You see the chain of events that unfolded in the real history of the ship, or so they say. 2. The impact site. This is where the initial intense stuff would have happened. Let's scrape the side of the ship up. Have some guys get blasted by water and assumingly drown. Have a guy get burned by steam in his face. Guys getting trapped behind the watertight doors that are closing in this action sequence. Red lights flashing in an industrial looking environment, which is very James Cameron, as seen in all these accompanying images from his previous films. Smoky, metallic, industrial mazes is something Cameron gets a hard-on from. Number 3, action down below. The ship is slowly filling up with water. Let's get our heroes down into the ship to squeeze some action out of that situation, rather than keep them up on the boat deck, as mostly all the other Titanic films have done. None of them really had the lead characters adventuring down below in the ship. It was more about the human drama above.
Goodbye. God bless you.
Take care of yourself.
Next, let's add sparks. Lots of sparking. Chaos, breaking things, breaking doors. Punch a guy in the face. Punch this guy in the face. Punch that guy in the face. Why not? We'll have Jack handcuffed to a pipe in a desperate water-rising situation.
I'll just wait here!
Kate will have to rescue him with an axe. How about a sudden rush of water in slow motion with sparks? We'll drown a kid too. And let's get trapped again. Some tense scenario with the key and almost drowning like in the abyss. Water! It's fucking scary! Some more sparks. Then we'll dry off. But we're not done. There's still more jumping, leaping, climbing, punching, slapping, pushing, shooting, people falling down and getting hurt, murder, suicide, and one more punch in the face for good measure. We haven't even gotten to the ship yet. Number 4, the ship. The captain dies on the bridge when the water comes crashing in. Cables snap from the funnels, hitting people right in the fucking face. The funnel then lands on poor Fabrizio. Mamma mia! I got the crust. The guy gets electrocuted, ship explodes and cracks in half, people fall into sparks, hundreds of people get smashed by the stern section in the water, guy breaks his legs on the propeller blades, and some lady slides to her death, revealing her unwashed pantaloons, of which she had soiled. But wait, there's more. Don't forget all the action when the ship is sinking too. Crashing and smashing and falling and breaking. What does showing all this shit have to do with the greatest love story ever told? Oh heavens, I don't think one could squeeze any more action into this movie realistically, without having it turn into some campy schlock. Now most of you will argue that this is how most of this shit really went down. Pun intended. But Cameron continued to put his action stamp on Titanic, most notably in this scene that was cut from the final film. Now you may or may not remember that at the end Lovejoy had a bleeding gash on his head. I was like, how did he get that? Did he bump his head on something? No, he probably had an elongated fight sequence that was cut from the film. Turns out I was right. Lovejoy goes after Jack and Kate in the dining room to get Kate's heart of the ocean diamond. They have a stalking scene, and then a cool fight in the water, which is pretty much a hallmark of James Cameron. By the way, this guy is played by David Warner. You might remember him as Chancellor Gorkon from Star Trek VI. He was also in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. You know, I haven't watched Star Trek V in a long time. Maybe I'll give it a look. Then we have that pointless modern-day mystery subplot about the hunt for the diamond. Things were set up that this was some kind of treasure hunt mystery movie, too. What happened to the diamond? The old lady will give us clues. No one remembers this stuff about the Titanic. You probably could have eliminated that entire part of the movie and not lost any of the emotional impact. Plus, this old bag sucked at acting.
And I can still smell the fresh paint.
So when did Titanic go from this to this? Well, you see, legend has it that Cameron didn't even know about the Celine Dion song at first. He was planning to end the movie with just score music. But then James Horner wrote the song, and they recorded it in secret. And then they give it to him, and he listens to it, and he's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I guess we could use this. That's fine. Cha-ching! It's fine that a movie finds its footing or a different angle after the fact. Cop-Out was changed from bad to much worse in editing, but whether Cameron wanted to make an action movie with a dash of romance, or a romance with a dash of action, doesn't really matter. I'm exploring why people hate this movie, and I think a great deal of the reason is because of that stupid song. But if you cast all that aside, you got a really good movie. A movie that looks amazing and has some really great scenes and performances. But most importantly, it wasn't a slap-together quick Hollywood cash grab. Not that all movies that aren't slapped together turn out good, but this one literally has it all. And you could see the time and care that was taken in every aspect. Titanic is a 3-hour movie that doesn't feel its length. It's true epic filmmaking, and you've got to give it a nod for that. Regardless if Titanic was a simplistic story, it's a special effects masterpiece in my opinion, utilizing almost every technique imaginable. Titanic was made in the golden age of special effects in my opinion, the mid-90s.
Yes, this was back in 96 and 97 when we still did things with real people and real sets.
A magical special time when CGI was a new tool that was used only to enhance certain shots, but not to create them entirely like today's movies do, which look so fucking fake. Titanic relied on real sets and miniature models of all different scales. Titanic achieves the best compliment of all in terms of visual effects. The fact that most things you don't notice is a visual effect. Miniature engine sets and turbines at different scales. Lots of physical stunts mixed alongside digital people. Flooding the actual sets with actors in them. Full-scale sets cut right along with miniature sets and so on. When a movie can make this look like this, you know, it's top-of-the-line movie making. But let's move on to the part that everybody wants to hear about. How the movie fucking sucks!
Bloody hell!
Number 6, haters gonna hate. Now let's talk about the bad.
Full house, boys! No!
This movie has the ability to highly irritate its audience in several ways. You see, only Rose McGowan is likable on screen. She's a fantastic actress doing what she can with this shitty script. She also has a great rack. Hey, you fucked that room up, Katie. But Leo, on the other hand, is possibly the worst actor since Jim Varney's Coffin.
It lets us know where we rank in the scheme of things.
Leonardo DiCaprio started out as a stupid kid sidekick on a show called Growing Pains. And like most child actors, he probably wouldn't have made it as an adult if he wasn't lucky as a child actor first. Sort of like Natalie Portman. She was sexy as the kid in The Professional, but later she proved to be a hack as an adult, starring in such flop films as Your Highness, Brothers, Thor, and Garden State. If cancer were pretentious, it would be Garden State.
It's good, I like it.
Her boring, monotone performances were not simply limited to Queen Armadillo.
I will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war.
And like DiCaprio, she only excelled in 2 types of acting. Playing a retard.
Blah, 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 blah.
Do the siren, alright?
And yelling.
Fuck you! Fuck you!
But when push came to shove, neither could really act well. They simply portrayed actors in movies and survived on their good looks in prior hit films. Even Martin Scorsese ruined several of his own movies by casting Leo in them.
I'm telling you, something's wrong.
You must have lost a bet. There are some exceptions to the rule, of course, but most child actors grow up to be talentless hacks. Actors like Drew Barrymore, Corey Feldman, Corey Haim, Macaulay Culkin, Gary Coleman, Danny Bonaduce, and Kevin Bacon. But to be fair, it's not all Leo's fault, even though his talent is limited to shouting.
Don't fucking walk away from me, you bitch!
The script is filled with terrible and embarrassing dialogue that probably wouldn't sound good coming from any actor.
I've walked about a mile around this boat deck and chewed over how great the weather's been and how I grew up, but I reckon that's not why he came to talk to me, is it?
The movie was also a cornball fest that would make Roger Corman blush. James Cameron can write utilitarian dialogue that moves the plot along.
I'll be back.
And he excels at writing science fiction and action stories and set pieces. That's his element. However, people, romance, and period dialogue is not his strongest suit.
Don't do a period movie. Don't do a period movie. It's deadly, you know?
Yeah, period movies are deadly. They're also pretty bloody, too. Hey, where have I seen this before? Kate, everybody wants to spin you round and round.
This is bad.
Dialogue that is bad is, of course, subjective. Like when my wife says, "Harry, I want a divorce." And then her next line is screaming. And cut. End scene. Perfect. Now that's good dialogue. But some of the lines in Titanic are real head-scratchers. Most come from Wisconsin's own Jack Dawson, or Billy Zane's character, Clifford Huxtable. Comical, one-dimensional characters that feel like someone's putting an SOS pad in your ears. Oh, I guess I mean a CQD pad in your ears. Ow! Here, let me share some with you. I'm sure you can't wait. Jack says, "Open the gate."
Open the gate.
And then, since that didn't work, he decides to try,
Open the gate right now!
"Hey, that'll work." Then when some poor man is praying, Jack pushes him and acts like an asshole.
You want to walk a little faster through that valley there?
You unimaginable bastard.
You unimaginable bastard.
If I had $1 for every time someone called me that.
No, mate. Titanic go to America in 5 minutes.
Hey, how'd you know they were going on Titanic? Shut the fuck up, nobody asked you. So this scene was supposed to introduce Lovejoy as a clever adversary. But the fake situation, I thought, was that Leo saved her from falling over the side of the ship while she tried to look at the propeller blades. Right? But then Lovejoy says this.
The young lady slipped so suddenly and you still had time to remove your jacket and your shoes.
Shouldn't he have said, it's curious that you took off your jacket and your shoes for some reason? Like, why did you do that? I thought this Lovejoy guy was supposed to be some kind of fucking former cop.
Seems like a cop.
I think he was.
More like a former retard. And a current retard. To add insult to injury, some audience-pandering dialogue is thrown in for good measure. Cameron knows his film is appealing to the dumb masses, so he writes in some groaners like,
What's the artist's name?
Something Picasso?
Something Picasso. He won't amount to a thing.
Okay, I get it.
He won't. Trust me. At least they were cheap.
Cut it out. I get it already.
Do you know of Dr. Freud, Mr. Ismay?
Oh, and Sigmund Freud. We've heard of him.
Freud? Who is he? Is he a passenger?
Let's not forget that some awkward dialogue will always lead to unintentional sexual innuendo. Don't tell me you weren't a little uncomfortable when Leo and Fabrizio were practicing for their float position in the gay pride parade. Fabrizio even talks about his genitals.
Very small, of course.
You mean one leg on each side?
It's been 84 years.
Let's stretch her legs.
I think you must have had a love affair with her.
No. Just with her hands.
I'm getting off with you.
It was a dreadful heavy thing.
You would have gone straight to the bottom.
Any room for a gentleman, gentlemen?
I don't need women at this time, sir.
Well, Jack, sounds like you're a good man to have around in a sticky spot.
Number 8, the story and similarities. Like Jar Jar Binks, you can cite Jack and Kate as the annoying reason why you hate this film, but it runs a lot deeper. Pun intended, things you might not have noticed, but your brain did. You see, Titanic had all the glitz and glamour of old Hollywood. Attractive star-crossed lovers, a mustache-twirling villain.
You know, you don't want somebody who's a mustache twirler.
Hey, shut up, I'm talking! Amazing sets, state-of-the-art visual effects, action, and an awesome score by James Horner to tug at your heartstrings. But when the characters and the story are laughably simplistic, it harms the overall product. In fact, old Hollywood was more complex in the story and characters. The Titanic is a story in itself. One of the more popular Titanic films, A Night to Remember, told the story of Titanic without fictional characters and subplots. But most Titanic movies relied on this to create the dramatic connection and a focus for the audience. Compared to even the Hallmark TV movie of the week, Cameron's Titanic plot and characters are embarrassingly bad and simplistic. Let's recap. Jack Dawson, a free-spirited, adventurous guy. Loves art, and he sees people.
You see people.
Kate Winslet, young, beautiful, but also sad. She loves art, just like Jack. Personally, she has no faults, other than a tendency towards suicide. Kate's mom wants money. Cliff Huxtable has money, objectifies women, beats women, and tries to shoot women. He also has no faults. So these are pretty simple and predictable characters. You don't gotta be Edgar Casey to predict the events in this movie. Now some of you might be saying to yourself, there was a made-for-TV Titanic movie like at the same time James Cameron's Titanic came out? Why yes, there was. Truth be told, Cameron had been working on Titanic well before this thing came out. Not sure what the connection is between them and if there is any. So we'll go with the chicken and the egg logic here. But what can be pointed out is a series of odd similarities between these two movies, and other Titanic movies that came out before. It's obvious, though, that with the movie based on a historical event, you will have similarities. The ship will hit an iceberg.
Thank you. Iceberg right ahead.
Turn.
The band will play on till the end. Isidore and Ida Strauss will stay on the ship together for tax purposes, and so on. A lot of the dialogue, scenes, and the way events unfolded will be based on passenger accounts and recollections, testimony from survivors, and so on.
Excuse me, what will you stop for? Mr. Andrews!
Aren't you going to try for it, Mr. Andrews?
Won't you even make a try for it?
Everyone's to put on warm clothing, get their life belts on, and go up on deck.
What?
It's only a precaution, ma'am.
I'm sure it's just a precaution.
Everybody up, get dressed, get your life belts on at once. Everybody up, put your life belts on. Just put your life belts on.
Let them see you wearing it. Put it on, child. For your own sake, too.
Lucy, for God's sake, put on your life belt. Set a good example.
The ship has about an hour to live.
The ship will sink.
Get your wife and children into the boat.
Thank you. And get to a boat. Quickly. Don't wait.
What's the use? No one's listening.
What's the use? Nobody's listening to us anyway.
People don't listen when they're eating, but we play just the same.
Well, they don't listen to us at dinner either.
Why do the British find it necessary to announce dinner as if it were a cavalry charge?
Why did they always insist on announcing dinner like a damn cavalry charge?
Hertha, komm doch schon, Wein!
I've been looking. You're all right. Rose.
It's a mathematical certainty.
It is a mathematical certainty.
Other similarities might have been more specific things, like shots or visuals lifted from other films. The way certain scenes played out could be direct references to older Titanic movies, or maybe taken from that book by Walter Lord. I don't know, 'cause I never read it. I don't read things. The only thing I've ever read was the directions to my flashlight. How do you turn this thing on? I gotta change the tire.
Thank you for calling. This is how may I help you?
Hello. I've got a question about an order I've received.
All right. May I have your order number?
You know what? I don't have it.
Is it a question just about the item?
It's a question about the item. It don't work right.
Okay, what's the item?
It's item 080A, the Tegan Presley Pussy. It's a flashlight.
Okay, what's your question?
I don't see a place to put batteries in it.
As far as I know, the flashlight doesn't take batteries, but let me...
How can a flashlight not take batteries?
Okay, have you ever had one before, sir?
Well, yeah, I've had them all my life.
You've had flashlights all your life?
Yeah.
I mean, they've only been out for a few years.
You see, the thing is, it's dark in my garage, and I'm trying to change a flat tire on my car. I can't see what I'm doing.
Okay, let me look up your order. What's your last name?
Plinkett. Mr. Plinkett. Plinkett.
And what's your zip code, please?
I don't know. It's in New Jersey. 00841.
You said it starts with a P as in Peter, Plinkett.
P as in penis. That's right.
Okay, Mr. Plinkett, well, we don't have you on file. I'm thinking that you bought that from somewhere else, but flashlights do not take batteries.
But how do they turn on?
They don't turn on. But, sir, you did not order that from us.
Oh my god, I have to go. My cat's fucking my fleshlight.
All right, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Anyways, but in a lot of cases, the similarity is too striking not to mention. It's all too much for even me to sort out. I'm too busy to deal with most of this. My point is, the general construction of a Titanic movie has been written before. It can essentially write itself. And things can even be lifted from other films without the threat of plagiarism because it's been told so many times before. If you know the history and the timeline of events, you've got yourself a movie. Just add a C-grade, one-dimensional soap opera love story and you've got yourself the most successful film ever. However, they did attempt to apply this formula, unsuccessfully I might add, to the 2001 film Pearl Harbor, which turned out to be a 4-hour-long nightmare of schlock. It's like some asshole said, "We need another Titanic cause we love money." What other historical event can we slap a love triangle into? Rip off Titanic's famous bow kiss scene by trying to do the same shit with the plane? However, Bruckheimer and Bay's cynical cash grab failed to impress even Mongoloids. And the film even starred 2 of them. Cameron's Titanic is what they call lightning in a bottle. Can't always be explained. All the pieces of the puzzle fit perfectly. But all the pieces were already in place in many ways. The movie made itself.
The actual story of the Titanic, what happened in 1912, how the disaster came to be, just became endlessly fascinating to me. You couldn't have written it better. It's like a great novel.
Let's take a look at the 1996 Hallmark TV movie Titanic and our main characters. I noticed some interesting similarities. First off, we got these 2 characters, Jamie and Jack. Both names start with J, both guys got blonde hair, and they're poor guys. Both start off at a bar in the Titanic port town. They run through the streets, and they get a ticket to Titanic that didn't originally belong to them. Then on the ship, they both realize they got shitty clothes.
What's wrong with my bloody suit?
They put on a tuxedo that doesn't belong to them, and they end up in first class. And both also have an awkward conversation with John Jacob Astor. Let's move on to Catherine Zeta-Jones's character Isabella. She's a lady that's a little disillusioned by the show of high society. Kinda like Kate Winslet. She's in kind of a boring, loveless marriage back home in the States, but she hooks back up with someone she used to be in love with. Someone who she's not supposed to be with. And that excites her vagins. And that excites her vaginoon. And I think that excited her vago. And that excites her vagini, vagona. Then in the movie, he also dies. It's a tragic love story. Why is sinking in the Atlantic Ocean so fucking romantic? Kate Winslet was also disillusioned by the socialite crowd and lifestyle, and chose the allure of forbidden love. She was supposed to marry Cliff, so the idea of running off with Jack also excited her vagal. So the idea of running off with Jack also excited her vagoon, vaginzo, valgo, vagugu, vajala, vaguna, squishbox. But despite these curious character and visual similarities, the previous Titanic movies were all infinitely more complex with the dramatic situations and characters than Cameron's flop film. There is even more shower rape too. I mean, who didn't get raped on the Titanic by Tim Curry?
Oh, yes. They float.
Number 9. Screenplay and film analysis. Titanic represents top-of-the-line movie making in terms of action, direction, and effective scenes, which come out of nowhere and surprise you. In fact, one of the best scenes in this film is this one. Frances Fisher delivers a great performance as Kate's mother, with her soul-piercing eyes. There's a nice visual metaphor here with the corset being tightened around Kate. And they even bring up the whole women's rights angle that was beginning to take shape at the time. You know, women voting. Scenes like this one and the scene where Thomas Andrews tells them that the ship is gonna sink.
But the ship can't sink.
She's made of iron, sir. I assure you, she can.
Are short, to the point, dramatic, and effective. One of the problems is that Titanic lacks more of these scenes. They make up just 1.3% of the whole movie. The rest indulges in the less realistic and comically simplistic romance and class stereotyping that Cameron is now known for. The real-life historical characters on the ship are treated much like the sets, accurate in the visual sense, but lacking any realistic emotional depth.
There was an effort on Jim's part to make these people look the way their photographs look. He cast people based upon their appearance.
There's a nice little scene in the 1996 Titanic when Isabella talks with John Jacob Astor's new, young, and pregnant wife, Madeline. They talk about divorce, feminine hygiene, and lady things like that.
These things seem like they can never work out, but somehow they do. Life is so short, Isabella. There's hardly any time, is there?
This scene added some realistic depth to both characters. A lot of scenes like this are missing from Cameron's Titanic. Much like Avatar, Cameron here goes for simplistic stereotyping in his writing. On Titanic, the first-class passengers are made out to be comically one-dimensional, ignorant, stuffy characters.
So it's all's well and back to our brandy, eh? Ah. Well, join me in a brandy, gentlemen?
Especially Huxtable.
Probably best. Your business and politics, that sort of thing, wouldn't interest you.
While the third-class passengers have real heart and know how to party. Even their children are cute and perfect. Everyone's perfect. While it's true that there is a world of difference between the first and third-class accommodations, and the third-class people generally got the shaft when the ship sunk, real people and real history is not so black and white. Titanic felt more like a Saturday morning cartoon show version of the story from a historical perspective. The characters in the film don't feel real, especially Jack Dawson. That's why I have a hard time mustering a tear for him when he gets frozen and sinks below the ocean. Oh, by the way, science called. They said that bodies float. The movie asks you to like Kate, our lead. You can tell that she's headstrong, independent, well-read, artsy, and could probably accomplish a lot more in her life than being a vapid socialite. Applying all these basic tacked-on traits makes you want to root for her because she's held back by her comically evil fiancé. On the other hand, she's propped up by Jack, a guy who seems to always know where to go and what to do.
We have to stay on the ship as long as possible. Come on. No, come on, let's go this way. Come on, Rose. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on, Rose. Come on. Right? Come on. All right, come on. Come on. Come on. Come on!
He knows everything somehow.
It's going fast. We have to move.
Including the physics of what will happen when a 45,000-ton vessel sinks in the water.
The ship is gonna suck us down. Take a deep breath when I say.
He's selfless and flawless. Then there's examples of the obstructing, lower-ranking crew members on Titanic as either assholes, jerks, dickheads, fuckwads.
Come along, you.
Cowards, spineless pussy men. I'm sure they all weren't little bitches, but it helps the simplicity of the script. At least the movie showed Ismay looking somewhat remorseful in the lifeboat. He wasn't counting his money or complaining or something like that. In real life, you probably had a lot of first-class rich guys who were super nice and were really good family men, and third-class guys that were drunk assholes who beat their wives. But in James Cameron's little brain, people fit into categories according to their class. Sure, the tables and light fixtures were perfectly accurate, but the comical interpretation of the people wasn't.
Now, you moron!
Now, I use the term one-dimensional a lot, so let me expand on that. Rose's mother has a good scene in this movie. You almost feel sorry for her at this moment. So there's this, and then there's the scene when Cliff says,
"Open your heart to me, Rose."
Both characters have a fleeting glimpse of some depth, but it never returns, and it may have all been fraudulent anyways. All throughout the movie, Rose's mother acts like a fucking horrible person. She says with complete sincerity, but university is a place to find a suitable husband. Rose has already done that. What a bitch! She orders around all the maids and acts like a clueless cunt.
I'd like a cup of tea when I return.
Yes, ma'am.
Now she's either playing the act of being a first-class rich woman,
Will the lifeboats be seated according to class?
or she really is a selfish monster, and this scene was all for show. She certainly doesn't act like a woman who's terrified of losing her good name and becoming poor. So when Rose leaves, you feel almost no sympathy towards her, thus detaching any emotional interest in anything happening. A simple trick would have been to show her looking more worried about Jack Dawson, rather than looking filled with hatred and disgust. The mother's internal conflict of having to marry off her daughter in exchange for her happiness could have made her a more interesting character. Same goes with Huxtable. He could have easily been portrayed as a kind of sad, lonely, rich guy. Maybe he spent his whole life acquiring his fortune and didn't have time for love. He could be awkward and kind of inconsiderate because he doesn't know how to treat a woman. But at his core, he didn't need to be evil, and certainly wouldn't try to murder anyone. I guess if you need some action, maybe have his manservant try to kill them for some other personal reason. Maybe Cliff could try to stop him from trying to murder them and he gets shot in the process. You know, some depth. But instead Huxtable becomes a mustache twirler. The real villain in the film should have just been the iceberg. That's the way to win over her heart, buddy. Conversely, Jack's only detriment is that he litters. Hey, you gonna go get that? I thought you cared about the environment. What a hypocrite. Unsubscribed. Seems silly to spend $200 million on a movie and not have interesting characters. Oh. Did you guys hear that Disney bought Star Wars? I don't see what the big deal is. I bought Star Wars. I got it for $20 at Target. I'll be here all week. Take my wife, please. Then Kate's motivations for changing her mind about the entire course of her life and dooming her mother to a life of poverty is based on this: witnessing a little girl being instructed on how to be a proper lady. While visually poetic, it's overly simplistic. Rose breaks the cycle and learns how to spit, ride a horse, fly a plane, and not be a trophy wife to some closeted gay in a toupee.
Don't give me that jazz.
The groan-inducing lame plot does allow for visually cinematic moments, like the famous bow kiss scene. The idea of the scene is very creative though. The cinematography at sunset, the music, the emotion. All the elements of moving your audience are in play here to perfection, which is what a good movie does. Your reaction to this kind of stuff will put you in one of two categories, a romantic or a cynic. However, while Cameron understands real people about as much as George Lucas, the man can write a screenplay like nobody's business, except for the dialogue part.
What I was thinking was, what could have happened to this girl to make her think she had no way out?
Despite what I consider an unnecessary modern-day subplot, it's a tight script filled with wonderful little moments, details, and setups and payoffs. Here are some now. Kate doesn't just find her rape whistle, it's set up ahead of time. The knife Fabrizio wins in the poker game he later uses to cut the ropes on the lifeboat. Lovejoy's gun is established and shown to Cliff, which comes into play later. Rose learns how to spit from Jack, and then later uses this skill against Cliff, right in his face. Now you might be thinking that these all sound like really small, pointless, and obvious things. And yes they are. But the point is, a lot of scripts don't even bother with tiny setups like this. When they don't, you find yourself saying, oh, I guess he's just got a gun now. Okay. Oh, she just spit in his face. Okay. It's kind of weird, but I guess it worked. She got away. Hey look, that guy just happened to have a whistle that she could use. That's convenient. You see, brief setups avoid confusion later. The less questions people ask inside their own brains, the more they'll enjoy the film. The old car is established. Jack knowing how cool the view is at the bow of the ship is established. He may not have written the most realistic characters, but for someone who is making a $200 million budget movie, at least he understands the basics of screenwriting. Oh. There are also a lot of smaller details that show that Cameron has a good grasp on the visuals as well. These are really small things, but worth mentioning, because I notice little things, like Captain Smith's foreboding sunken lemon in his tea. Next, if you notice when Jack proposes a toast, Rose's mother is the only one who doesn't raise her glass or drink. It's very subtle and it's in the background, but it makes sense. And then when Kate enters the afterlife, or whatever it is, Captain Smith is the last person to be seen applauding, as the captain is always the last off the ship. Number 10, sink or swim. So does Titanic survive this review? Does it sink or swim? Well, the real Titanic sunk. I think in this reviewer's opinion, it's split right down the middle. No pun intended.
Technically, the Titanic didn't split down the middle. It split between the third and fourth funnels. Which is not really in half, it's more closer to 2/3. Check your facts before you say something.
What? What the fuck?
Unsubscribe.
Who are you?
Check your facts.
Who are you?
Check your facts.
Oh, I know all the facts, you little asshole. I got them in my brain. So let's recap and break it down. James Cameron's Titanic is A. Filled with stuff we're all familiar with and have seen before. B. Predictable with flat and simplistic characters. So what's the appeal? While my interest in the movie lies more in the technical and historical, I don't think that's the case for 99% of the movie-going audience. This film was in theaters for nearly an entire year and had sellout crowds over and over again. Why? And it's not because Titanic had realistic, compelling characters wrought with emotional conflict. I therefore must say that my Titanic review results in this conclusion. Most people are dumb and don't like to be challenged intellectually or emotionally. They like the familiar and gravitate towards things that feel safe and non-confrontational. Titanic as a movie played it safe. All the things I suggested to add depth to the characters were disregarded. James Cameron isn't a lousy screenwriter. He might in fact be a fucking genius of some kind. But whether it's emotional familiarity, vicarious fantasy romance, simple adventure and excitement, sci-fi action and danger, or cheap thrills and laughs, these are movies, and this is what people love about them. The ability to vicariously transport yourself into a fantasy world, away from your boring day job as a bank teller, a CPA, or a toll booth operator. But it's not just emotion and escapism. The success of movies often comes in their simplicity, just like how most newspapers are written on the 4th grade reading level. You see, the average human IQ is 100. So if you want your film to make money, you've got to aim for average.
I just heard that you have to see it.
It's just so full of human drama. It has all of life in it.
I liked all the special effects of how the boat was sinking and how it was made.
Oh, and the romance played a big role in the movie, I think.
Just look at the top box office films of all time, and then consider Suicide. It's the reason why a quality film like Hugo earned nearly 10 times less than a movie like Shrek 2. Directors like Cameron and Spielberg are masters at pulling at those all-important heartstrings. With some exceptions, they are the makers of the movie versions of Applebee's, Panera Bread, and TGI Fridays. Exceptionalism is the exception, my friends. The brilliant, complex, and challenging falls to the wayside, while the safe and the familiar is the norm. So this is why I can't say officially that Titanic is a bad movie. You see, Titanic aimed for the middle, and it hit the mark perfectly. Titanic makes you step back and look at the bigger, more depressing picture. That we're mostly creatures of habit, and we're all average. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Number 11. What really happened? When James Cameron made Titanic, it was only about 10 years since they discovered the wreck. The official conclusion before then, despite some testimony to the contrary, was that the ship sunk intact. But when Robert Ballard discovered the Titanic, it was in 2 pieces, so it was proven that the breakup did occur. Cameron and all the experts at the time thought the ship went up as high as a 30-degree angle, and then the weight caused it to crack. In later years, these fat guys would find pieces of the bottom of the ship, and some evidence would suggest that the ship didn't get so high up in the air, and then it caved inward and then broke, probably below the waterline. Truth is, most people are lying about what really happened and don't know shit. Because I was there. You see, my mother, father, and I stowed away aboard the Titanic in some luggage, because my father was too cheap to buy tickets. My mother and I left our luggage in the middle of the night, but my father was left to drown in his suitcase. Poor bastard. You see, no one was on the bridge that fateful night. Those assholes were all in the back smoking and drinking. I was only 6 years old at the time, so I thought it'd be fun to go up and play with the big steering wheel. Then my friend Tony appeared in the form of a pizza roll.
Steer the ship into that iceberg. Come on, it'll be fun.
So I did just that. Now, no one wanted to admit that a 6-year-old crashed their fancy new ship into an iceberg, so they all agreed to make up the whole story, with the iceberg right ahead and hard to starboard and all that bullshit. And another thing, the ship didn't crack in half. It was blasted in half by a UFO. I saw it happen from the lifeboat I was in. Did you really have to do that, aliens? I mean, the ship's fucking sinking by itself here. We didn't need that. And my mother was fucking the captain in his cabin. Because you know what they say. The captain is the last to get off. Thank you for watching my review. Don't forget to stop by my web connection. www.redlemidden.com. You can see all the other reviews I've made there. My cat's penis is stuck on a fleshlight.